Salmon Rillet. It's a very velvety dish that's perfect to spread on bread. You can use it on a picnic. It's a great first course that you prepare in ahead of time. While you're preparing the main course, you can maybe sip a little glass of bubbly while you're doing that. Our second course is a traditional poached beef tenderloin. One of my favorites. It's in a very nutritious broth with seasonal vegetables. You know, it's a dish that you don't see in restaurants too often anymore, but it is delicious and really not that difficult to do. Don't be intimidated by any of these recipes. You can do them. And our final dish is a classic baked Alaska. Hot, hot, hot meringue around creamy, delicious ice cream. You know, that's going to raise the temperature in the place for sure. All right, our first dish are rillettes. What are rillettes anyway? The traditional rillette is pork usually, and then another meat cooked for many, many hours, and there's plenty of fat in there. We got to have our fat, don't we? What's wrong with fat anyway?
Nothing.
Absolutely not. This dish is a modern version of the traditional rillettes. You cook them a long time in the old days, and till the meat shredded, and then you packed them in a tureen, and you put fat on it. It was a way to conserve the harvest, if you will, and to be used a certain amount of time later. This dish is very fast to make. It's made with seafood. Very helpful. Those salmon have omega-3 fatty acids in there, very essential for the diet. If you can find wild salmon, the season is usually a little shorter. You can find the farm-raised year-round, and there's nothing wrong with a high-quality farm-raised, but wild salmon is the very best. The theory being, not only do you have the better color, which makes the rillette look a little bit better, but it's actually, you know, gone on this little trip out to the ocean and back and has fed on the diet that it needs, and then when you eat it, it imparts that nutrition and flavor to you. You know, our ancestors, when they saw a wild fish or a wild beast, they would gobble it up thinking that they would get that wildness. Well, I think there's actually a nutritional point to that. All right. We're going to take our wild salmon and poach it here. Just about 5 minutes in an aromatic broth. We already have some here that's prepared ahead of time. This needs to be done ahead of time and then cool down. You could bake it if you wanted to or saute it, but I think it's nice to poach it. And then we're going to take smoked salmon. This is a combination of smoked and fresh salmon. Now, I like to use a very richly smoked, a long smoked salmon, which is usually the style that you see from Alaska, which I'm going to dice up here, and we're going to make the traditional rillette, but with fish. And of course, we're going to add a little fat to it, because you've got to have that fat in the rillette for that mouth feel, for that texture. All right, we're going to cut up the salmon. We're just going to dice the smoked salmon here. Put this over here. We've diced up the smoked salmon. We're going to put it in our little handy-dandy blender here. All right. And I am going to take butter, of course. This replaces, in the traditional rillettes, the fat. What's wrong with butter?
Nothing.
It's good for you. You know you want it. You know you do. All right, we're going to take a couple of tablespoons of butter and put it in there. We're going to take, all right, I'm trying to be good to you. I'm going to put a little olive oil in there too. Extra virgin olive oil, which gives it a little flavor. I think that using exclusively butter makes it a little too rich. Using exclusively olive oil doesn't quite make it rich enough, so we put a combination of the two. Plus, with the olive oil in there, you can feel better. Oh, there's olive oil in there. That's good for me. It's all good for you, ladies and gentlemen. Pure, whole food. Give that to that special someone, and then he or she will have the energy, as you will, for good loving and good living. All right. We are going to take some lemon juice. Right now, our salmon is just about ready here, so I'm going to pull that out. But we must let it cool before we mix it in, so I'll just put it right next. Look at that beautiful color on the wild salmon as opposed to the farm-raised salmon. It just doesn't have the color. Let me show you how to peel the lemon, because you want the outer skin only. The inner skin, which is white, can be very, very bitter. So just make sure you get yourself a potato peeler or a very sharp knife and just, see, try to leave that inner skin off there. Chop it very fine and blanch it or boil it, however you want to call it, for about 4 or 5 minutes to get rid of the bitterness. And we're going to add that to our rillette. You know, I have to call it rillette. You know what it is in English? Rillette is called potted meat. No wonder the French never get along with the Brits. You know what I mean? Imagine if I put potted salmon on the recipe. That's worth about $1.50, maybe. Now, if I put les rillettes de saumon, that's $9.95. Then I'm going to put a little heavy whipping cream. Oh, about a teaspoon. God, they're mighty stingy with that heavy whipping cream. You know what I mean? Don't you keep a gallon at home? Of course you do. Everyone keeps a gallon of heavy whipping cream handy at the house. All right, and then a little finely chopped dill right here into our mix. There you go. And then if we can figure out how to process this little thing. I mean, in the kitchen I have one this big. We're going to process this, and this can be relatively fine. All right, we're going to put it on high here. Now, there's one final step in our rillette de saumon. We are going to take the salmon that we poached ahead and just flake it, if you will, into, you can just do it by hand or with a fork. Just do it this way. Because I want kind of a little texture to it. It's just more pleasing to the palate, if you will. And it's so good for you. You know, I think if you prepare a healthful meal for someone, that intangible good feeling, knowing that you've given them the best fish or the best meat, and cooked in the most healthful manner, just kind of is going to carry out through the whole evening. All right, we're going to flake the salmon in there, and then I'm going to take the contents to the bowl. Now, I just want to mix it together lightly so as not to completely annihilate, if you will, the salmon. So it has a little bit of structure to it and crunch. All right. Now, I better taste this to make sure it's acceptable. A little more salt and pepper. And try to use sea salt. Whole sea salt. All those natural, especially trace minerals, are still in there, and it goes with your seafood perfectly. Then I'm going to put this in a serving dish right here. And you can make this up to 2 days ahead of time. This is the part you prep ahead. This is the part that you serve while you are preparing the main course, or later on, the baked Alaska. You have some raw product in here, so you don't want to leave it out very long, but put it out at maybe about a half an hour beforehand, and serve it with some nice toasted country bread. Put it on here. And if you happen to have a sprig of fresh dill handy, of course you do, you could garnish it. And voila, les rillettes de saumon.